Well, another gardening year has come to a close, and just like every year, this year had its own unique challenges and surprises. In this video, we are going to take a step back and look at everything from a big picture overview, really look at just how the seasons and the weather shaped us here in Southwest Ohio in our third gardening year. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Peter with the Garden Family, and we garden in Southwest Ohio, planting zone 6B. We have a family of 6, and we make it a goal to try to grow as much of our own food as we can here on our land. We started our garden from scratch, from bare ground, in 2022, and so this was the third full season that we've had. I hope you enjoy the video. It was a cold January. Of course, Januaries are almost always cold here in Ohio, but what stood out about this January was the consistency of the cold. Usually we'll get periods of cold and snow followed by thaws, but this January we stayed frozen the whole month. But that doesn't mean we can't start gardening. We started our onion seeds on January 13th in our indoor seed starting room. I like to broadcast seed into these little to-go containers, then pot them up later. We also started ginger this year, which is a first for us. Stick around to the end of the video to see how this turned out. Here are the little onion seedlings 8 days later on January 21st, and here they are at the end of January. As we transitioned into February, the snow persisted, but the ponds started to thaw as we got some above freezing temperatures. We potted up the onions into 72 cell trays. We generally like to plant our onions out in March, and this usually gives the roots just enough room to grow without being too big of a pot. We also winter sowed many perennial flowers using these mini milk jug greenhouses. These perennials generally cost quite a bit at a nursery, so this is a really good way to add a lot of flowers to your garden at a low cost. By the middle of February, the snow had melted, and it felt like we were headed towards an early spring. We started our cauliflower and other brassicas on February 16th. We found mid-February is about the right timing to get them out in early April. As the snow melted, we also started pruning our fruit trees. Pruning trees will make them temporarily more susceptible to the cold, so we like to wait until late February to ensure the really bitter cold has passed. This tree here is an older apple tree that we've been bringing down to a manageable size over the past few years. We also applied our dormant oil spray to our other fruit trees. You generally want to do this in late winter or very early spring, just as the pests start waking up. While it was still cold, the days were getting longer as we headed into March. March was a busy month of getting the garden ready for the season. We had a stretch of warmer than average temperatures and decided to plant our onions out on March 8th, a week or two earlier than normal. Despite this earlier planting, the root systems were looking great in the 72 cell trays. Having the onions in separate trays made transplanting and spacing quite easy. We topped off a few of the raised beds with new soil mix, and then got right to work moving wood chips for the pathways. We use free arborist wood chips in deep layers in the paths to prevent weeds. We got our straw bales delivered and began setting up the straw bale gardens for the determinate tomatoes and melons. April started off with some colder weather, with consistent frosts on the ground, but the blooming redbud was a sign spring was here. We planted out our brassica plants and other cool weather plants in early April. Down in the seed starting room, we potted up many of the summer plants which generally get planted out early May. We also started putting together some of the infrastructure for the summer garden, including a new tomato trellis system. By the end of April, our tatsoi and other Asian greens were ready to harvest. And the grass and trees were a vibrant green. Early May is one of the most beautiful times of year here. We planted out our tomatoes and peppers in early May with a favorable one-week forecast. Our cool weather plants had grown considerably. After typical early May temperatures, later parts of May were unusually cold. Luckily, the tomatoes brushed it off. The broccoli enjoyed it, and the peppers were kept under cover for added warmth. The onions, which also prefer cooler temperatures, were looking our best yet with great growth. The foxgloves and other spring flowers made such a vibrant display. Towards the end of May, we harvested our broccoli, which was planted early April. Brassicas love cooler temperatures, so the colder than average May made for some really nice spring broccoli this year. With the start of June, the summer heat finally came. Early June is one of my favorite times in the garden. The heat brought vigorous growth to some of the fruit trees, so we summer pruned the stone fruit. We harvested the last of the spring vegetables in June, including this beautiful lavender cauliflower. The warm nights also awoke the fireflies in the meadow. The tomatoes grew quickly in the warmth, working their way up their new trellises. Unfortunately, towards the end of June, we had a strange heat wave while we were out of town, causing some bolting of our onions. We had about a week of temperatures in the high 90s with low humidity, which is very unusual for us. Still, most things recovered as we moved into July. Early July is the sweet spot for the summer garden. Everything is just ripening and the plants are still healthy and vibrant. We usually get our first ripe tomatoes around the 4th of July. The midsummer flowers were all in bloom and the harvests were pouring in. This is what we worked so hard for the last few months. August is probably more productive than July, but the plants start to lose that glow. This is generally when we get the bulk of our paste tomatoes. We grow our paste tomatoes in straw bales with 2 plants per straw bale. We like to grow determinate plants so we get most of our harvest all at once to batch process our tomato sauces. We always have a goal to have enough sauce to last us until the following summer. August is also when most of our melons ripen. One standout was the watermelon Onza, which is a smaller seedless watermelon. It was the best watermelon I ever tasted. September, we slowed down our pace in the garden a bit. The dahlias this year were amazing, and the pollinators tend to peak around this time. Our figs, which we started from cuttings last year, were quite productive this year. While the tomatoes usually slow down, the peppers hit their stride in the later season. With the ground drier, this is also the time when I usually get some other projects completed around the property. In early October, we harvested our sweet potatoes. Unfortunately, voles got most of them this year. We also harvested a bounty of butternut squash. The ginger I started way back in January was pulled prior to our first frost. It made a huge amount of ginger in a small space. We're definitely growing this again. With our first frost coming, we pulled the peppers to make way for the garlic. Our first frost came on October 24th, which is about the average time for us. Late October brought on the changes that signaled the beginning of the end of the gardening season, and time for us to rest and reflect on the year. We planted out our garlic, using some of the cloves from our harvest in June. With a bitter cold forecast on November 10th, we pulled many of the fall brassicas. We started most of these from seed in July and planted them out in August. Well, I hope you enjoyed that big picture overview of our third gardening year here in Southwest Ohio. If you did enjoy the video, give us a thumbs up down there, or let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. We do have some other videos coming up. We will do one a little bit more detailed about what worked, what didn't, and specifically talk about different seeds that we're going to use next year. So look for that in the near future. I hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving and enjoy the rest of the holiday season. Happy gardening, everyone.